They stood together in a unity government until it all came apart. Now Palestinian political rivals Hamas and Fatah have taken the first steps on a very long road towards reconciliation. After days of negotiations in Yemen, they've agreed to hold direct talks on a deal reached in Sana'a. Well, up for discussion, the formation of a unity government, the holding of new general elections in the Palestinian territories, and the reform of the Palestinian security forces. Our correspondent Jackie Rowland now looks back on the events leading up to this point.
After the collapse of the Palestinian unity government, a simmering feud erupted. After months of hostility and suspicion, Hamas and Fatah fought it out on the streets of Gaza with bloody consequences. The winner in military terms was Hamas. It seized control of the Gaza Strip and routed its Fatah enemy. But Hamas paid a big price in political terms. A period of isolation was about to begin. 5 months later, and the United States held a one-day meeting aimed at relaunching the peace process between Palestinians and Israelis.
Thank you for coming.
On the guest list, President Mahmoud Abbas and Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. The Americans chose to deal with the Gaza problem by pushing it to the side. Hamas was excluded from the conference, as if by ignoring the movement, it would simply go away. Hamas proved it was a force to be reckoned with in just a matter of weeks. It blew up the border wall separating the Gaza Strip from Egypt and broke the siege that Gazans had been living under for 6 months. Ordinary people were able to get their hands on basic products that Israel had been keeping out of Gaza. It couldn't have happened without the tacit complicity of Egypt. Since then, the Egyptians have been increasingly active in mediating between Fatah and Hamas and the Israelis. A series of events that has led to the meeting in Yemen in recent days. To say that Fatah and Hamas have reached an agreement would be to overstate what's happened. But the two sides have reached some kind of understanding that dialogue is necessary and should continue. Anything that may lead to a unified Palestinian position in future talks with Israel can only be welcomed by ordinary Palestinians. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera.
Right, well, joining me on the line now from Gaza is Hazem Abu Shanab, Fatah spokesman in Gaza. First of all, what does Fatah want from any future deal?
Of course, we want bringing back the unity among the Palestinians as a whole. We want everyone to deal as under the role of the law, the basic law that was established by the Legislative Council, the Palestinian Legislative Council, and we want guarantees that there will be no going to use the violence, the internal violence, the power between the Palestinians to solve any problem in the future. You know that we suffered lately from using the power against our members, against the Palestinians, to control, that Hamas to control using its power against the Gaza Strip.
So what do you want with regards to the Gaza Strip?
We want the Gaza Strip to get back again, one unit with the West Bank, the whole Palestinian lands which were occupied on 1997 by the Israelis. We want this to get again one unit, so we can face the peace process, the negotiations with the Israelis under one ruler, which is President Mahmoud Abbas, the legal elected president by the Palestinians. We want to get back again as one unit, physically and according to political points and according to the geographic dividation between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, so we can get back again, deal with the international community as one unit.
So you want Gaza to come under the control of Palestinian Authority security forces, is that right?
This is according to the law. We want it according to the law, according to the basic law of the Palestinian Legislative Council, and we want the legitimacy of the elected president that he can rule. This is what we need.
Do you think that would be acceptable to Hamas?
I think we will have obstacles, but I think that everyone must have this kind of convincing Hamas leaders and others, so they can get back again to this reference. once we have any differentiations or any differences, once we have any obstacles facing ourselves as Palestinians, we have to get back to the law, to the courts, to the Legislative Council, to the legitimacy of the President as he is the higher elected person in the country. So these are the means that we want everyone to get to when there is any kind of problems or, as we said, differences between each other.
I mean, this agreement doesn't seem to be a deal. It seems to be a willingness to simply continue talking. Do you think that these talks have perhaps fallen short of the expectations of the Palestinian people?
The Palestinian people are fed up with what's happening, and he wants again to see his president in Gaza, not as to be shown as if he is exiled from the Gaza Strip and he cannot enter the Gaza Strip. We want him again in the Gaza Strip. We want to see the law very vital and working in the two parts of Palestine, I mean the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. We want to see the Gaza Strip a small part from the Palestinian coming, state, so we can say that we want to be reunited again with our brothers, with our relatives in the West Bank, and that's what we want. We want to be, again, one unit, geographically, politically, and even on the human level.
Abu Hazim Abu Shanab, thank you very much for your time. In Turkey, hundreds of Kurdish protesters have clashed with police and soldiers in a fourth day of running street battles. Demonstrators have now been banned from holding celebrations to mark the Spring Festival, as Alan Fisher reports.
There's no sign of an end to the violence, no easing of tension. For a fourth day, running battles have been fought on the streets between security forces and protesters in southeast Turkey. In Yusakova, police fired bullets in the air and used tear gas after coming under attack from a crowd throwing stones and bottles. Kurds have been protesting after police banned their New Year's celebrations. As news spread of a death in yesterday's demonstration, fresh violence erupted. Police say they moved in because protesters chanted illegal slogans in support of Kurdish guerrilla groups, and Abdullah Öcalan, the jailed leader of the outlaw Kurdish independence movement, the PKK. The Kurds have used the New Year or Newroz celebrations in the past to call for greater autonomy and improved rights. In Turkey's biggest city, Istanbul, it was a much more peaceful story as thousands turned out to mark the occasion. 50 people were killed during the Newroz protests in 1992. The authorities will be determined these demonstrations don't reach that level and some sort of peace can be restored. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
It's been a deadly day in Iraq with a series of attacks in Baghdad and across the country, leaving more than 25 people dead and dozens more wounded. Mortar rounds and rockets have exploded across the capital, causing panic and at least 5 casualties, a large number landing inside the heavily fortified Green Zone. At least 15 Iraqi soldiers were killed in the northern city of Mosul after a suicide truck bomber attacked an army base there. Gunmen opened fire on shoppers in southern Baghdad, killing at least 7 people. Well, despite that violence and amid tight security, Iraq's Christians have turned out in their hundreds to celebrate Easter Sunday. It's just days since the kidnapping and murder of a Chaldean archbishop rocked the country's Christian community. But as James Bays reports from Baghdad, they remain unbowed by the threat of more attacks.
Easter remains a time for celebration for Iraq's Christians, even though they're a dwindling community which feels constantly under threat. Church services like this one were held across Baghdad. But in Mosul, the country's biggest denomination, the Chaldeans, cancelled their service. 10 days ago, their Archbishop, Paulus Faraj Raho, was found murdered after being kidnapped. A member of the Armenian Church says the last 5 years have been terrifying for all Christians, but he says whatever happens, he won't be leaving his homeland.
We had our churches bombed, our figures assassinated, and the latest is the murder of the Archbishop of Mosul. But despite such circumstances, this will not deter us from staying in this country.
Over the last 5 years, Christians in Iraq have had their faith tested as never before. There used to be over 1 million Christians in this country. But as Iraq has descended into chaos, many have fled abroad. The service at Baghdad's only Anglican church was led by the only foreign priest still working in the city.